Well, welcome, those of you who are going to be watching this after the fact. And welcome to my awesome friend Raina, who is in this class going through PMP World. One of the things about the PMP exam that a lot of people forget is that it is not as all over the place as we hear these days. Some people say it's big, there's too much stuff. But I like distilling it to the simplest pieces. And there are three parts to the PMP exam, and they are people, process, and business. The people domain is all about communications, leadership, stuff that you have experience with. Then we have the process domain, which is all about following structure and order, following the idea of 49 processes, or if you're in the world of Scrum, Scrum is quite structured. So it's following those procedures. And the last piece is about business, understanding how project management relates to business and how business relates to project management. So here's the trick to studying for the PMP exam. Those of you who say the exam is all over the place, there's a trick. There are 35 things. And under people, there are 14. Under process, there are 17. And under business, there are 4. Let's go over that again. People, 14 tasks that the PMI says, well, if you want to be a PMP, you should be able to do these 14. Then there's process, which is 17, that they say, if you are a PMP, we expect that you can develop a schedule, manage a schedule, develop a budget, manage a budget. Quality should be all over it, and things like that. And business, they want you to be able to relate project management to the business environment. They want you to understand compliance. They want you to understand when there are opportunities and to seize the opportunities. And those are the 35 big ticket items that we're going to go over right now. Now, for those of you at home who always ask, which book should I study for the exam? I'm going to show you, let me grab the book Raina's holding. Thank you, Raina. And I'm going to show you this book right here. This book is called PMP Exam Immersion. I wrote this book with my buddy Roy Schilling, who is my Agile coach. And this book is very different from a lot of the other books. You know why? Because the other books want you to study a lot of the knowledge areas and the process groups before they give you the substance. And some of them don't even have the substance. But this book has got the 35 big ticket items and the minutia that goes with it. So I'm going to hand this back to Raina, and Raina, you can just follow along. Each chapter is going to be one of those 35 things. So right here on the screen, the very first part is the people domain, and this is 42% of the PMP exam. Now, under the people domain, we have manage conflict. It's kind of strange that they would open with a manage conflict. It sounds like, is that the first thing I do as a project manager? Manage conflict? Where's my team? So it doesn't really make much sense, does it, to say manage conflict is the first? No. So I want you to understand that the order that the PMI has it is not really anything other than an arrangement. But if you are on a project, the first thing you do is you kind of build out the team, not begin managing conflict. So I don't want you to read any meanings to the order that they have it. The order is not logical. I have other documents where I arrange them in logical order, but let's talk about task 1, manage conflict. Is conflict good?
Can be.
It can be, right? What are the circumstances when it's good?
Constructive.
Exactly, constructive
Giving you
conflict.
ideas outside of the box.
There you go. And in the world of PMI, they have 3 enablers. These little bullets that you see on the screen, the enablers. I actually sent this document to your email. It's free from PMI. Those of you who are watching after the fact, just Google PMP exam content outline, and it's going to come up with this document. So PMI say to manage conflict, 1, interpret the source and stage of the conflict. Where is it coming from? And then analyze the context for the conflict as a good project manager. Now, PMI isn't saying solve conflict for those who have it. No, they want you to facilitate it though. They also want you to have ground rules so people know, all right, if there's a conflict situation, this is what I do. And Raina, to be honest, in corporate America, all the training I've done and globally, Very few teams tell me, oh, yeah, we have a team charter, or we have a social contract that helps us understand how to manage conflict. A lot of them don't, but they should. Just because people are adults doesn't mean they're good at managing conflict. So PMI say you should evaluate, recommend, and reconcile the appropriate conflict resolution solution. So you got to understand what is best. I'll give you a quick example. I used to work right here in this building upstairs for a gaming company. And in the company, I wasn't getting along very well with a program manager or manager in the firm. And my boss would hear us bickering. He gets so fed up. And then he got to a point, he said, both of you, I'm fed up. Here's a credit card. Go to lunch together and solve your problems. I'm fed up of hearing about this. So I'm behind the wheel, and my coworker, I'll call her Grace, we end up driving to this restaurant, and as we're going, we end up in conversation and realize we actually have more in common than we thought. I'm into music. She's dating someone who's into the world of music, and we found common ground. Long story short, we came back to the office peacefully, peacefully, and we were able to resolve conflict, but that wouldn't have happened if my boss didn't step in and say, hey, I'm fed up, here's my credit card, lunch is on me, go sort out your problems, I don't care what you do, just solve them. And that's an example of reconciling the appropriate conflict resolution solution. Sometimes you just need to push people in the right direction. Now, in the world of PMI, I don't know if you remember this from way back, there are 5 ways of solving conflict. One is avoid or withdraw. That is running away from the conflict. And that's a lot of people, they don't like conflict. They want to run away. And then you have force or direct. You have those people who, yeah, bring it on, and they're bullies in solving the conflict. They want the conflict to come on, not for the right reasons, it's for the wrong reason. They want to bully the person. Then we have compromise or reconcile. And compromise or reconcile is like 50-50. Then we have smooth or accommodate. And smoothing is like, oh no, forget me. I'm just going to go with whatever Raina says in the, I just want peace. Yeah, I'm just going to concede. Whatever she wants, I'll do. And that is the extreme of withdraw, right? Withdraw is running away, but smoothing is like saying, no, you take it all. But compromise or reconcile is like 50-50. And then PMI's favored approach is where you collaborate or problem solve is what they call it, which is we're sitting at the table and we're talking and giving and taking and coming to an agreement on how we're going to navigate it. So task 1, you're going to find on the exam a lot of the questions. You'll be like, Raina's a project manager in a project. She encounters a stakeholder who is belligerent and angry and always in conflict. What should she do? Then you have a bunch of options, and the best option is really collaborate, problem solve. Let's sit down, let's have a conversation kind of thing. So that's task 1. Sounds like project management in the real world, doesn't it? Task 2, lead a team. What is leadership? What would you describe it as?
My current leader is a visionary.
There you go. I love that.
He sees the vision, and then he adapts his goals and his style to that vision.
Oh, fantastic. You took the words out of PMI's mouth. Because when you talk about adaptive, we have situational leadership, which is adaptive. So we have a model called the Hersey-Blanchard model. And right now we're going to chapter 2. This is kind of chapter 2. So it says, set a clear vision. And that sounds like your leader, which is awesome. The good book says, where there's no vision, the people perish. And it's true. Where people don't know what they're meant to do, they're all over the place. In any walk of life, right? And then it says, value servant leadership, determine the appropriate leadership style. So that one is right on the money. I like the fact that he adapts his style. And that's how the PMI advocates that you should. And we want you as a leader to understand influence and persuasion versus carrot and sticks. Those leaders who use carrot and sticks. And some of them use carrots in a bad way. It sounds like, oh, we're going to get a reward. No, they're giving you a reward because they don't trust you. So I don't know if you remember from way back when, maybe from your MBA and so on, we have 2 categories, Theory X managers and Theory Y managers. And the Theory X, the reason why we call them Theory X, their arms are folded like an X. Like, yeah, I bet Raina's just playing on that phone of hers. She ain't doing any work. And then you have those that are Theory Y, which are the open arms. They believe the best in you. They want to push you forward into your excellence and stuff like that. So we don't want to be Theory X, we want to be Theory Y. So in this one, leading a team for the exam, you got to be aware of the Hersey-Blanchard model and situational leadership. Don't lead everyone the same way. All right, there's also a topic here going into chapter 3, support team performance. So a lot of people, their teams are not performing as well because they as managers or leaders, they're not giving them the support. So PMI is calling this out and they say support team performance, appraise team member performance against KPIs. Have you ever worked for management that just judges you based on some arbitrary thing? They haven't set the KPIs, and KPIs are important. PMI are calling it out, and they're saying support and recognize team member growth and development. Like some of my students, those of you, you know who you are, some of you are graduates, right? And they come back to me and I say, how did your management respond to your PMP? Like, nothing, I didn't even get a congratulations. And that's not good. PMI in chapter 3, they're saying you should recognize team member growth, like a pat on the back, a shout out, a gift card, something, So PMI is very, very big on the human piece, as you can see, and I love the fact that they put it first. All right, let's go to task 4. It says empower team members and stakeholders. My mentor, John Maxwell, he has a saying, he says, only secure leaders give power to others. Only secure leaders give power away. What do the insecure leaders do? They hoard it. They don't give it away, and they're always micromanaging. PMI says we need to move away from that model. And it says organize around team strength, support team task accountability, evaluate demonstration of task accountability. Like when people show I can be trusted, give them more, start beefing up the accountability and move away from that highly directive approach. When it comes to empowering team members and stakeholders, we must remember that teams go through 5 stages. It's called the 5 stages of team development. I'm sure you'll remember this. So when teams come together and they form for the first time, they ain't at their optimum state. They kind of, okay, I'm good. I don't know about the other person. They're forgetting that teamwork makes the dream work. We need to work together as a team. So you have the forming stage where everyone comes on the picture and everyone's looking like butter won't melt in their mouths, like, oh, I'm the best thing since sliced bread. But then you move into the next stage, storming. The boxing gloves come off and people are going at it. A lot of teams, they struggle here. And this is actually where the project manager needs to be a little bit more directive in helping people come out of the storming stage. And then they get into norming. And norming is where, well, I guess Raina isn't that bad after all. I used to think she was against me. She's not. And then you're beginning to see eye to eye. And then you get to performing. Oh my goodness. Talk about a steep gradient. This is where the team is moving in one cohesive whole. They're getting stuff done. They're mowing the work down. Phil doesn't come to work. Raina feels, oh, I wish Phil was here. He would have been able to help us. Raina doesn't come to work. Phil feels bad. And you're moving as a well-oiled unit, like a team. And that's performing. And the difference between the world of predictive and the world of agile is predictive, everyone comes together for the project and they go their separate ways. But in agile, they got sense. Once the team is moving in one cohesive whole and they're mowing stuff down and getting stuff done, guess what we do in agile? We keep them there. We don't want the team to disband. In the world of predictive, we have the adjourning stage. Mm-hmm. And adjourning is where everyone goes their own separate ways at the end. No, agile is smart. They know all of this is work. This is equity that the firm has put into this team. We can't allow them to just go their separate ways. Let's keep them together. So it's a different mindset. So when it comes to empowering team members and stakeholders, you got to understand that over time they're going to get better. They're going to, they age well with time. They get seasoned and they get even better. And by the time they get there, just get out of their way and let their brilliance continue. So that's the mentality in task 4. All right, going to chapter 5, it says, ensure team members and stakeholders are adequately trained. Hello? Yeah, but some companies, they didn't get the memo. They don't send their people for training. Why? Well, Raina may get mad and leave, and we spent all this money invested in her. Do you know some companies actually do that? Which is pathetic. It should be the mentality of, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. So it's, but instead, some companies don't. But PMI is calling this out because if you don't train your people, they're not going to be at their best on the project. So that's a no-brainer. Number 6, build a team. So it says appraise stakeholder skills, know where your stakeholders are at, know the skills they have, and then build from there. And then continuously assess and refresh team skills. You know what some companies are guilty of? They're guilty of sending you for training 5 years ago. 4 years, nothing. 3 years ago, nothing. 2 years ago, and here we are. When last were you trained? Oh, I got training. They sent me for my PMP. What happened after that? Nothing. And that's not good, and the PMI is calling that out. But anyway, building the team, you got to continuously assess and refresh team skills to meet project needs. All right, let's go to chapter 7. Chapter 7 is the life of Raina, the project manager. Address and remove impediments. I know you've got experience with that, with the divestitures and stuff you've done, because you as the PM, they're going to bring all the problems to you. They're going to ask you, well, what do I do next? Help me. And that's what we're doing in task 7. We are addressing and removing impediments. But the language here is actually more agile. Because who says impediments in the world of predictive? No. What do they call it? Issues or problems. Or they may even convolute it and say, well, I think there's a risk. What should you do about the risk? Well, we're going to mitigate it. Is that all you're going to do? Well, that's the only thing you do with risk. No, there are other things you do with risk. You don't just mitigate. You can mitigate, you can accept, you can transfer, you can avoid, you can escalate. So in this world of removing impediments, it's very important that we understand what PMI is saying here is whether you're in the world of predictive or agile, if there's anything in the way of the team, be it an impediment that slows you down, maybe you were sprinting and all of a sudden you get into quicksand, that's an impediment, right? Or an obstacle, maybe this chair is in the way. This is an obstacle. What am I going to do about this? I can either climb over it, but it's going to waste time, or I could go around it. So the PM's job is to remove those obstacles. And then what do you have? Blockers. Like this table right in front of me is a blocker. I cannot move beyond here. And it's a job of the PM to remove these obstacles and blockers. But we don't call them that in predictive, but we call them that in agile. So just kind of join the dots. All right. And it says you got to use your network to implement solutions to remove impediments, obstacles, and blockers. Number 8, negotiate project agreements. So other than money, what else could we negotiate?
Change.
I love that. Fantastic. She said change, just in case you didn't hear. Negotiate change, I love it. What else could we negotiate?
Time.
Fantastic.
Milestones.
Oh, beautiful.
Change management.
Beautiful. You got it.
Risk.
Fantastic. You could negotiate all of those things. And PMI says determine a strategy. So when you're going in, instead of having a win-lose, I want to gain and the other party, we want to have a win-win. That's PMI's new mindset, I would say. They've always had it, but it's coming to the surface now. All right, we're on chapter 9 now, Raina. Are you finding chapter 9? Chapter 9, fantastic. So collaborate with stakeholders. So evaluate the engagement needs of stakeholders. How can I best engage them? So you got a stakeholder that doesn't show up for meetings. What do? Give me some tips. Or you got a stakeholder.
I usually instant message them and say, are you coming to this meeting?
Nice.
Or sometimes I'll be proactive and say, hey, we've got a meeting in 20 minutes. Here's some pieces that we're going to talk about, whether it's a formal agenda or...
That is a great technique. So give them a heads up, and maybe they'd even forgotten, but they're going to get in, and they're going to show up. They're going to show up and say, "Oh, I knew we had to meet." No, they forgot. You helped them. You helped them. So that's a great tip. That's a great tip for project managers listening. Send reminders, because a lot of times people don't mean ill intent. They just forgot with all the crazy work we've got. You know, a recent survey showed that the program and project management community are the most burnt out in the workspace. And I can't believe that. I can't believe it, because some people are on 10, 15, 20. I had a student that was on almost 80 projects. And she said, well, I just come in and initiate it and I move on. But it's still a lot of projects, 80 at one go. So in this world of collaborating with stakeholders, we got to cut them some slack. We got to understand people are stretched thin, and we got to find a way to engage them properly. All right, let's go to number 10. Build shared understanding. What's the best way to build shared understanding? What do you think?
Transparency.
Fantastic.
Keep it
Transparency.
transparent.
I love that. Transparency. And part of transparency, you know, like in the world of Agile, as opposed to just having things in reports, locked up in Gantt charts, in the world of Agile, we love using information radiators and displays where people can see how things are progressing, where things are. So instead of going to ask the team, give me a report, a stakeholder can just look at an information radiator and know what's going on, and that's transparency. So building shared understanding, we got to get to the root cause of a misunderstanding and just be transparent. All right, let's go to 11. Engage and support virtual teams. Hello. How many people are working on site every day of the year? Very few. A lot are hybrid. Some are just totally agile, like totally virtual and agile, you know, which is funny because back in the day it said, in order for agile to be effective, we want people to be co-located as much as possible. But that's not possible anymore. So how do we cope? Cameras like this, you know, cameras actually go a long way. And like this, which is really what excites me, that you are here in our office for this meeting, because we could have done it on Zoom.
Sure.
But
Sure.
you came in, and honestly, I'm really excited because we go way back to 2010, and seeing a friend from the past, it goes a long way. But isn't it more content rich to see my funny antics, me moving up and down?
Well, there's an interpersonal
There you go.
connection too. when you're in person.
Exactly. It goes a long way. So this is an example of what PMI is saying, and PMI says continually evaluate the effectiveness of virtual team member engagement. It just ups the ante when you're like, okay, this isn't working. Let's provide better tools for our people. You know, some firms, they try to scrimp on technology dollars, and they're like, well, I don't think we can afford a subscription to Zoom. Seriously? I need to pay them a visit. All right, let's go to task 12. Task 12 says define team ground rules. So what are ground rules? Do you remember those from way back?
Expectations.
There you go. Do's, don'ts, expectations, and penalties, but not in a bad way. There was a group of folks I was training at Yale University, a class similar to what we're doing. It was project management. And here I'm training about 8 in the morning, probably 8:20, and then one of the team members just saunters in, and someone shouts from the back, "That's $5. Oh, he's so mad. He takes out his wallet. Yeah, he's you know, moaning all the way, and he takes out the money and throws it in and curses. And someone says, "That's another $5." So he's so mad. His name is John. John is not my buddy. John got so mad, but he had to part with $10, all in good faith and jest. But he was penalized because he violated on 2 counts. And what do they use that money for? Pizza parties, little get-togethers and stuff with a team. And that's why PMI is saying ground rules. Ground rules are good. And when you do it in a fun way, you know, some teams do silly things like you come late, you're going to stand on 1 foot for 10 seconds, or you're going to sing a silly song. And while people feel this is dumb, it's actually, it bonds the team. Like whenever I see those folks at Yale, I can say, remember the time John came late to class? And we have a laugh and remember the good times, you know. So ground rules, if you do them in good old fun, It goes a long way. All right, we got two more in people. Mentor relevant stakeholders. Allocate time to mentoring. So I often ask people, think about it. Have you had a mentor in the past? And then I say, what did the mentor do for you? And they tell me. And then I say, have you had a coach in the past? What did the coach do for you? So there's a difference between the mentoring and the coaching. When you have a mentor, a lot of times they're sharing based on their best practice and experience. Saying, Raina, based on what I experienced, I think you should do X, Y, Z. But a coach will not tell you the answers. A coach will say, what do you think you should do about that? What could happen if you thought about that a little bit more? What ideas do you think you could come up with? They will not give you the answers. And when the answer comes from within, science has proven it's more profound and people follow through more on what they come up with as their solution. So a coach, mentor, they're both great. And right here, I think PMI just bucketizes everything as mentoring. So you could have mentoring, you could have coaching. It says recognize and act on mentoring opportunities. Let me give you a funny story. My buddy Roy and I, we train, my co-author, we train different companies. So we're out training this company in Agile. And as though this manager didn't get the memo about how in Agile we follow through on what we said we would do in the sprint, but we don't kill the team. In other words, you don't make the team do abnormal hours because that spikes your velocity. But this manager didn't get the memo. Here we are critiquing a particular team's performance and what they could do. And said, oh yeah, I'll just get them to do a bunch of overtime. You didn't get the memo. That's not how we do it in Agile. You don't just send people down the overtime pike and say, you're gonna work 50 hours or 60 hours instead of the regular 40. No, because it skews our velocity. So we just exchange looks. Bob needs he needs some mentoring because he doesn't understand how it works in Agile. In Agile, we talk about constant pace indefinitely. And in order to maintain a constant pace, you got to commit to what is sustainable, not doing a whole bunch of overtime. So it's a different mentality. So we kind of observe, yeah, Bob needs some training. He needs some mentoring in this area. All right, let's go to number 14. Final one in people. Promote team performance through the application of EI. Now, in the very beginning of the new exam, PMI, that was so over the top with this Myers-Briggs, like to a fault. INTJ, ISTP, ENTJ. And honestly, I respect the science and I know there's a methodology to it. But how many project managers in the real world will say, well, Raina is probably an INTJ. Let me gauge how I relate to her in this conversation. Who does that? Nobody does that. I have a buddy, his name is Rick Brinkman. He wrote the book, Dealing with People You Can't Stand. And in the book, he says people are fluid and dynamic. They're always changing. So you cannot bucketize people because someone might be a tiger in the office and roaring at everyone, but a little mouse at home under the sofa, crawling, being a puppy, rolling over and saying, I surrender. So PMI, I'm glad they dialed it down because it was excessive. They were doing so much Myers-Briggs stuff, but now they've toned it down. And a lot of it is basic emotional intelligence. So that is the people domain. And the questions, just to give you an idea of how they will be, the questions are going to be, Raina is a project manager in a project. She encounters a stakeholder who is aggressive and belligerent. It's affecting the team's performance. What should she do? It will always be, you are the project manager. Or they use the word project leader a lot. And people that haven't encountered that word, they're like, what's a project leader? Same thing. But it's always, what should you do next? Or what should you do first? Or what should you have done? And you have A, B, C, D. Usually it's choose one option. There might be the lone one or two where you choose more than one option, but it's generally one option. And then we have drag and drops. So you could have different stages. Storming, the team is performing well. Norming, the team is at a high level of excellence. But you got to match the ones that are right? And then that's how the exam is. It's 3 hours, 50 minutes. 3 hours, oh, am I tuning out? 3 hours, 50 minutes, which is 230 minutes. 180 questions. You have 5 questions that don't count. You don't know which ones. They're kind of experimental kind of questions. But it's broken into 3 pieces. 60 minutes, 60 questions, 60 questions, 60 questions. But they don't gate how long you spend on each section. So, for example, I have some students, they spend 80 to 90 minutes on the first section. Uh-oh. So guess what happens with the other sections? They're now trying to catch up.
Mhm.
And some of them, I had one student that got to the end of her exam. She had 10 minutes left, Raina. 10 minutes, 40 questions. Can you imagine that? 10 minutes, 40 questions. Do you want to know the outcome? You know what she did? She did this trick that I'm going to teach you. The trick is read the options. Like if you're in that kind of a bind, read the options, and those that are the most agile or the most PMP mindset like, choose those. She didn't read the questions, Raina. She stopped reading the questions and she just read the options. And she aced the exam.
Wow.
She aced it. Her name is Anne. If you look on YouTube, PMP lessons learned, Praizion, Anne, it'll probably come up. Her lessons learned are out there. And I was shocked that my approach works, because I had this approach I teach my students to just go through several bogus type options. Don't choose these on the exam, they're bogus. And it paid off, it helped her. So she's now PMP. But anyway, that's part 1. Thank you, those of you at home. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Raina. We will pause the recording and we will continue.